Our guest today is Marcelle Yeager. She helps people land jobs that get them to the next level in their career. At Career Valet, she works primarily with mid to senior level professionals. She is also the co-founder of a second business in 2015, ServingTalent, where she finds jobs for talented U.S. military and foreign service spouses. Today, Marcelle shares her tips and strategies to help employers as well as employees find the job of their dream and the employee of their dream. Find out more, visit ServingTalent.com or CareerValet.com. Hello, Marcelle. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. How are you today?
Hi, Christina. I'm great. Thank you for having me today.
You betcha. I'm so excited to have you. You help people around the globe get on top of finding employment. There are times where many of us are out of work for whatever reason, and we have difficulty getting back on top and getting out there. And I know from my own personal experience that when you either get let go or from employment, it feels shabby, and it's really hard to get back out there, get on your feet, and feel confident again. And you really help families and people find employment. So before we go on to sharing all the goodies of how people can, if they are unemployed or have a member of their family unemployed, what they can do, share with the audience a little bit about how you became a career consultant.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So it was forced into it. I did communications consulting for about 10 years. And then my husband joined the Department of State's Foreign Service. And it was sort of a kick in the pants to finally do my own thing, which I'd always wanted to do, but never had been sure what it would be. And I asked myself, what have I been doing for free for a long time? And one of those things was advising people on career development and salary negotiations and resumes and things. So that's why I started my first company to do that and do just that, really help with writing resumes and documents to help people get interviews and get jobs. Yeah. And that's led me to also develop a recruiting agency that is for military and foreign service spouses. So we help veterans, military spouses and foreign service spouses find meaningful jobs, as it's hard to take around with their lifestyle.
Mm. And we had a lovely conversation months ago now about some of these topics. And one of the things I never even thought about is some of the psychological and emotional aspects of coming back from the military and now being out of work and having difficulty, which I thought wouldn't be really hard, being all your experience in the military. I thought it would be a piece of cake for most military folks to find jobs, but that's not always the case. And it is kind of difficult for people. Share a little bit about the experiences you've had helping people in that area.
Sure, exactly. It is a struggle. You're absolutely right. And it's unexpected. And I think what happens is that it's sort of twofold. The veterans coming out of service feel that their expertise is really only in the defense sector. So whether that's, or government, right? So they limit themselves to looking for civilian employment in the federal government or law enforcement sometimes, or some kind of defense contracting. And there really are a lot more opportunities out there, but they're not quite prepared to look for those or know where to look or have the network to do so. And the ones that seem most successful that I've come across actually really do a great job of going to networking events and taking advantage of a lot of the training programs, a lot of which are free for former service members, and just really getting to know people and getting their name out there so that they can be contacted if something comes up, especially in a field outside of those particular defense-related areas. And then I think, too, on the employer side, which is hard and something we try to combat with our recruiting agency, is this view that if you are coming out of the military, you're slotted at a certain level. And even if you have 25 years of experience, they still sort of fit you in at an entry-level role where you really should be at a chief of staff or more an executive type role. And so I think there's a misunderstanding, too, of what value they bring is. And so unfortunately, there's a lot incumbent upon the service member to tell that story and really go above and beyond to show in person and through their documents that there are a lot more to them than just that service and how much they can add to a company, which is hard to translate.
It's interesting because I remember years ago I went for an interview and I had worked with a specific industry, I think fashion at the time, I was still in fashion, and this was working for media. And they sat me down and they said, well, generally we don't hire anyone who isn't part of this industry. I'm like, why? What's the big deal? When I'm coming in here for the job, I have the experience. Whether I've worked in this field, well, that's inconsequential. I'm doing the same work. So to me, it didn't really make sense. But the guy sitting across from me said, I'm going to give you a shot. I know you're not in our industry. I'm going to see how well you do. And of course, I did flying colors. But I thought it was interesting that they block you off and put you in such a tiny hole that you have to be in the industry. You have to be in this certain sect, this kind of niche. Exactly. If you don't fit in that exact niche, that exact box, well, then you're out. And why do you think that happens? Is it because there's just so much competition that they're just trying to narrow it down, or are they just ignorant? What's going on?
I think you're right. I think they are ignorant. I think that's a big part of it, unfortunately. But I also think it's that everyone's so busy these days, right, that they really do not take the time to think, not just who fits in the box, because that saves me time, right? I don't have to think through, would this person's skills translate into this new career? Instead, it's like, okay, well, if on the paper, are they this? Yes or no? Check the box. Do they fit into this mid-level role? Check the box. Instead of, that bigger picture of, do they have those soft skills to really be successful here? And I think when you find people and employers that can see beyond that and want to hire you for that reason, you're golden. But it's hard to find.
Yeah, and what I've known, I talked to this one guy I worked with a number of years ago, and he worked for a number of years in the military. Now he's working in security in the company I worked at. And he said the one thing he had the most trouble getting in the groove of when he came back to corporate was that the military life is so structured and everything, where your boundaries are, where you're supposed to be, who you report to, what you do. But in corporate life, even though it seems structured because you have managers and supervisors, it's not very... you know what I mean? It's not super structured. So has that been a problem for some of the people you help find jobs for, that, they have trouble getting back into the non-structured world of corporate perhaps?
Yes, definitely. And I think that a lot of them are shocked at the lack of leadership in companies, right? I'm sure you hear that all the time. Right?
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because they're taught, they're some of the best teachers of leadership and management. And they come in these companies and they say, where are the leaders? Like, why are people following these people? They've done nothing to gain people's credibility. And it's no wonder people are leaving these offices and employers. And that, I think, has been what I've found the most disconcerting to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find it disconcerting for a lot of corporations because now I come in and I work as a consultant. And what I find interesting is they say, okay, things aren't working. Tell us why so we can fix them. I said, great. So I just start interviewing folks, finding out what's going on. What are your systems? What are your processes? What's working? What's not working? And often it's really a lot of times personality issues, people issues, just getting a handle on your people. And a lot of times the people running things in certain businesses have no clue of what's going on with their people. And there might be a lot of titles and supervisors and managers and directors, but they're not, as you say, they're not leaders. They're just titles. And how can businesses or corporations really establish a kind of an arena where leadership reigns, not just with people with titles, but even with people who are, just your average, come in and administrative work. They can still be their own leader for themselves.
Yes. That's a great question. And you do. I think you have to model the leadership if you expect other people to lead and be able to take on projects and do a really good job and make you look good in turn. So it is incumbent, I think, upon you as a manager to do that. Yeah.
In fact, I was blessed a number of years ago. I worked at a business where one of the best bosses I ever had said, I leave all of you to be the boss of you. Now, I manage he'll get certain, things tossed down to him they ask to make happen in his department, and I'll put it out to them. But how you make it happen, it's on you. And he would give very certain expectations of what he expected you to do. And when I would come into his office with a problem, he said, okay, you better have lined up A, B, C, D solutions to that problem already to hand over to me. And I'd be like, whoa, really? He's like, yeah, I don't want anyone walking in here without solution. And so what I really loved about his leadership style is really, he was really propelling everyone, no matter where you were in the company, to be your own leader.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think you have to give people those tools, because if you don't demonstrate that you trust people to make their own decisions, whether you're in customer service or project management, you cannot expect people or the business to do well, really.
Yeah.
You have to trust them.
Oh my gosh. And we talked in our last chat together about some of the misconceptions in the job world, in employment world, either with employees or employers, either the employers looking for the cheapest buck and the cheap, looking to pay as little as possible, and how that doesn't always work out. And then of course the employee looking to always chase the dollar, and that it hurts both sides. What have you seen in your experience with that?
Definitely. I've seen that a lot, and it's frustrating because employers talk the talk, right? They say, we want the best talent, we hire the best talent, but then when it comes down to it, they don't want to pay the money, or they look past more seasoned, older colleagues or, potential hires, and they choose the more junior people that don't have the experience, or vice versa sometimes, right? You might have a really visionary, accomplished, young person, and then they overlook that because that person wants more money, and they just think we shouldn't be spending money on them. We can hire someone else who expects less at the same level. It's a huge challenge, and it's hard to figure out when there's all these studies that say how much money they save by hiring the right person first instead of hiring the wrong person, going through the onboarding process, losing that person. That's thousands and thousands of dollars that they're spending. And I know, as we talked too earlier, that, you've tried to work with clients to make them understand that it's better to make the right hire in the first place. But it is hard to do convincing. I think it's just part of the way the corporate culture has developed. But clearly the most successful businesses are the ones that seem to retain, hire the right people, have enough people interviewing them to really get a sense of the corporate culture, so both sides are making the right decision, and then they carry through, and those people are loyal for a very long time, and it helps the business be more profitable.
It's very complicated puzzle. I think I was telling you in our call together that I had worked with a client where they had an employee that was really a really star worker. I mean, they knew their job inside out, backwards and forwards. They were really good at it. But they began to see her, because she's a junior worker, not giving her kind of the reins to kind of grow and expand, and she didn't feel appreciated. And when you begin to feel not appreciated, you get stuck in on a hole. You kind of just do as little to get in, to get out, and And so, but talking to her, I realized that there was potential here to really max out her full potential and really help both sides. Her feel like she's using her potential to the best of her capacity, and for the company to really use that resource. But they were just like, well, we should just get rid of her and get someone else. And I said, but you know what? We already discussed that. Most big businesses in corporate America, especially in New York, I had heard studies where it's up to $7,000 per, getting rid of a new employee to get a new one for training purposes, because it takes a couple months to get up to speed where you know all the processes, you know all the people and players. So it really is not incumbent to just let go. So it's taking, at that time I was really trying to convince them to look at all of the talent that you got sitting here and find a way to motivate that talent to good of both, the good of the company and the good of the person.
I totally agree. And I've even, come across some really simple tactics that managers can use. And it's so obvious. It's sort of silly to say, but even just like thanking people at the end of a week, right? On a Friday before they go home. If you're in the same office, do it in person. Just go up one-on-one to your team members and say, thanks for your great work. Or send an email if you're working in a different location, or give a phone call. But something so simple, I think, can make an employee more, happy and to come to work on Monday. And then they're in turn going to do a better job because they have a more positive attitude about the whole environment. And it's so simple, yet so few managers do that.
Yeah, they take it for granted. Now, I had one boss that you'd like to do competitions, the employee of the month type thing. And I kind of enjoyed it at the time. I thought it was kind of cool. They give out prizes sometimes. Sometimes they give dinner to the employee. But I found that also set up this kind of competition that was unhealthy, because then they were like, oh, you keep getting the competition. You're the star pet. whatever. How do you feel about competition being used as a means to get employees to perform better?
That's interesting. I think it can be healthy, but I do agree that it drives a wedge between the team. And when you're trying to, build, if you're all working together or expected to work together to get results, then it's going to make it harder. And I personally feel like it's better to challenge people individually. So to set really clear goals for each person individually based on exactly what their job is, rather than between each other, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, I get you. I had mentioned to this one business that, hey, maybe they want to do a team, like the sales team. If you reach XYZ sales this month, we all get to go out and get pizza, or I don't know. Or, the accounting team, you do XYZ and close the books by, this time, we all get to go bowling for the rest of the day. That way it's a team effort and you all know, hey, you're not picking up the slack. Come on. We want to go bowling later.
Yes. No, I think that's a much better idea, because that creates that whole sense of teamwork at the same time as rewarding good work instead of, pitting people against one another.
Exactly. Now, you also have helped families who are out of work, but also help the spouses sometimes find work. Because as we discussed earlier, there is a psychological component and emotional component that you feel kind of, when you're out of work. It doesn't feel great for anyone going in this situation, anyone in the family. What have you done to help your clients in that fashion?
So that work has typically been for sort of the spouses of military or diplomats in the U.S. It's been really hard to do, because there's this perception among employers that, they move around a lot, so they can't have a steady job because they move every 2 or 3 years, sometimes even less. And so there's also gaps in their resumes, because even if they have managed to find work, many of them have jumped around and transitioned, switched careers. But as you can all imagine, that really creates a problem emotionally and financially for families, because now in the US, it's very common to have dual income. It's almost necessary to live today. But these spouses are, military spouses. There's been some surveys done by Blue Star Families and some others who have said that 51% of respondents say that the military spouse unemployment is like the biggest obstacle to their financial security and well-being. So when you hear things like that, and also that 90% are under or unemployed, that's a huge number. And so it's been a struggle for them, I think, to explain those things, because kind of like we were saying before, it's like when you come in and you're trying to change careers altogether and someone fits you in that box.
Yeah.
A hiring manager or an HR person doesn't see beyond that. And so they struggle with that from that perspective, where, it's like, well, you have to take care of your family because you're moving around. You have to take care of your service member, and why would we hire you? We don't think you're going to be around. When in fact, what I've found is that if you give them that opportunity and be a little bit flexible, if they perform well for you, they're going to work so much harder than a lot of other employees, just because you've given them that opportunity and worked with them, and they'll make it work because they want to work. It's almost like maybe they don't have to, but they have such a drive to work that they want to make it work. And some of them do have to. And it's really unfortunate that their skills and just naturally from the moving they do, I think that their drive is second to none. And it's something that's just underappreciated still.
Well, that's really sad. But what I find interesting in this day and time, when technology is the way it is, I've worked for a number of businesses where I could be anywhere in the world with my handy dandy laptop and help my clients. And I think if employers were to get the ideal that, hey, if I got a good employee here and they can, if their job it allows it, that they can work anywhere in the world, even when their service member, their husband or wife goes to another location, they can still work for us because we have phones, we have video. We have a number of ways for them to connect with our clients and the business and to keep doing the work. So there's actually a way that if you're creative, you can find a good employee and they can still end up working with you for even past the years in which they're physically there.
Yes, and I think that's the whole other thing that employers need to overcome. I mean, I'm sure you know that all of these big corporations, like was it Yahoo and most recently HP or Intel, did away with a lot of their remote work policies and just called people back into the office. And you see that, you say, well, that's not really where the trend is going, because like you said, the technology allows for it, and it makes sense because you can hire the best employees if you're more open to that. So it's sort of something that I struggle with, is trying to figure out why that is and why they're so hesitant. I think again it has to do with a lot of the trust issues, right? If managers don't trust their people, or they need to cut costs, it's just the first thing that comes to mind. Like,
well, here's the interesting thing. It actually cuts costs drastically if you can get your employees to work from home.
Exactly.
They're using their own electric, their own computer, their own phone. It's like, hey, this is awesome. If they could do that for all their employees, they'd save a heck of a lot on real estate as well.
Yes.
So, I mean, really, it behooves them to look into it because it actually saves. Now, I do see that some managers have told me we're scared to let our employees work off-site because they'll not do their job if we're not there watching them. And I say, well, there are more than one way to watch them, because I've worked for businesses that say your computer is being monitored. We know where you log on to, what you're doing, how many clicks. And if you let them know that this is our policy, we know and we keep track.
Yes.
When you're like on Facebook for 10 hours and not working, that will fire you. And we'll let you know. And so there's a way that you could cost effectively do this, save money in your business, at the same time make sure people are indeed working and they know they're being watched, even though there's not someone there physically watching them.
Absolutely. That's a great point, because I've seen numbers that are like as high as, $30,000 a year that you save by not having that overhead of somebody sitting in an office. So when you compare that to the cost of just monitoring, which you probably do already within your office, that's nothing. It's just a no-brainer. So
yeah,
I think that's
absolutely. Now, let's talk a little bit about the financial stress on probably marriages that happen during the time of being out of work, whether it's servicemen and women or just anyone out of work. How have you dealt and helped your clients deal with that? Because I'm sure that plays into being difficult, having difficulties in their marriage.
Yes, it is. And unfortunately, and I think that's a reason why a lot of, at least in the military and diplomatic space, a lot of promising people have left because the spouse has been unable to find work, and they've decided, family over work, which is good, but it doesn't have to be that way. And again, the employer fails in that respect. But I think, the emotional aspects are really difficult. And I think sometimes people it's almost like the employer having the tunnel vision with somebody's skill sets. I think we as individuals really need to think about especially in a situation like that, if you've been laid off or, you're just looking to change or not happy in what you're doing, is to really look at what are my limitations self-imposed or are they actual? So are you, is it just what you perceive or not? And I think it's really hard to look at yourself that way. But one way you can do that is honestly, and some people feel uncomfortable doing this, but I encourage people to really, if they don't know what their colleagues or peers have said about them and their work in the past, to ask. If you don't ask, you're never going to know, right?
Yeah.
So, people you feel comfortable with, that you had good rapport with, even friends and family, ask them, what am I, if somebody asked you what I was good at, like a reference, what would you say? I think that can help you reframe the way you think about your work, your abilities, your work ethic. And it might even give you some insights into other things you'd be good at. And that's a question, you can ask too, is, are there other things you think I'd be good at, especially people who know you really well? I found that when I was actually trying to decide what to do for my first business, is I had to talk to friends and family. When I asked myself that question, what would I do for free? it didn't come to mind immediately that I'd been doing the career coaching for a long time. So I asked some friends and family, and they came up with a couple different things, and some weren't viable, right, for a new career or new business, but some were. But it was hard for me to do personally. And I think sometimes people really close in on themselves, and that affects their relationships, their marital and otherwise, even children. And so you really have to remember that you're not alone in the struggle, and let other people help you, and just ask some questions, because they probably don't know how to help you, but they want to help you because they see you struggling. But if you don't ask, you're not going to get that.
Yeah. And they won't know what you need until you tell them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there was a gal I worked with many years ago in a company who was let go after 20 years. And here's the other aspect I'm sure you come across, is that people begin to become their job. Like their job is their identity. And when they lose it, it's as if they lost a piece of themselves. And that's basically how she felt. It was like really psychologically difficult for her, because she's like, that was me. That job is me. And when she was out of work and on unemployment, when the unemployment was about to run out, she was really depressed. And someone gave her the clue that she loved to cook and make soups. And he said, well, you know what? You've been doing these soups that are phenomenal, bringing them to work, and we love them. How about you try selling them? And then she kind of, by accident, started this business. So I think it's interesting that sometimes unemployment and going between jobs can actually be a blessing, where you start to, as you say, discover your gifts. Sometimes if you just ask your friend or whatever, they'll start bringing out for you, here's your great gifts, your strengths, your weaknesses, and you can start using them to the best of your advantage. And that's what she ended up doing. Happy accident.
That's a great story. I love that. And I do have, that reminded me too, that a client just wrote me this week and said she quit her job because she was so unhappy a couple of months ago, and sort of has spent the past few months sort of, decluttering her life and getting rid of that persona, like you said, because her whole identity was tied in her job. And now she's, looking out there and saying, okay, what could I do freelance wise? And I'm going to put myself out there and build up my profiles online and just see what happens. And if you have any ideas, let me know. And I think, that's you putting yourself out there, making yourself really open to opportunity is what's going to make things happen for you. And but don't expect it to happen overnight, right? I mean, I think some people think, oh, it's going to take me a month to find my new career, my new job, when it really can take 6 months, a year. But if you're doing the right things and putting yourself out there, it can happen.
Yeah. It's just allowing you the space to just, figure out yourself. And I found that when I started my consulting biz, the first day I woke up, the next day I woke up at 10 a.m. instead of my usual 7. And I spent an hour meditating and walking. I was like, wow, I haven't done this like forever. And it's awesome sometimes to get out of that space of where you've been in routine for so long, to allow you a different way to, behave, that allows you to open up the door to seeing things and possibilities that you hadn't seen before.
Exactly. I totally am a proponent of that, because you cannot be creative without giving yourself that air to breathe in that space, right? It's like going on vacation, or even sometimes driving in the car. There's, those white spaces that really give you that insight sometimes.
You betcha. Well, I want everyone to go, if they need your help and give you a call today, then go to careervalet.com, correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's my coaching business. And then if anyone out there is within the military or diplomatic community and would like help finding a job, it's ServingTalent.com.
All right. Well, I want to thank you again, Marcelle, for coming to share your great gifts and wisdom today on Savvy Business Radio.
Thank you so much.
Have you ever dreamt of having a podcast made about your family, about someone you love, or an amazing figure whose story must be preserved for future generations? Now you can do just that with Family Sounds. Our team of podcasting producers use personal and oral history to create high-quality audio documentaries about families and real-life heroes. We will transform your history into a meaningful story that can be shared and enjoyed for years to come. To learn more about Family Sounds and to receive your special discount, visit en.familysounds.net/podcast. podcast and enter promo code SAVVY. That is en.familysounds.net/podcast and enter SAVVY. Savvy Business Radio runs in syndication on 8 AM/FM stations nationwide, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out in a bigger way, call 732-474-7375 or email Christina@savvybusinessradio.com.